Welcome to Professor Oluwadeya's educational videos. The title of this episode is Turning Ideas into Research. Every year, millions of research articles are published. Where did the authors get their ideas from? How did they turn those ideas into research questions? And how did the research questions become actionable research? Based on my experience, I know that young researchers can find the very thought of doing research very intimidating. As an academic, research is fundamental to who you are. If you are not doing research, then you should not teach. Remember also that researches are the basis of your publications. So, publish or die can translate into research or die. By the end of the lecture, you should know what it takes to turn your ideas into research. As a wise man once said, plans are nothing, planning is everything. Research is all about planning and actuating the plan. If you are a young researcher, student, or resident doctor, having a mentor will make things easier for you. Starting your first research won't be easy, but if you set at it the right way, you are not likely to make too many mistakes. And if you do, the experience will not go for nothing. After all, the well-prepared is supposed to learn from his or her mistakes. What is the very first thing you must do if you want to do any research? What is the first step you must take? Of course, the very first thing to do is to have an idea in the first place. Without that idea, you cannot even start planning. So, getting that idea is the very important first step you must take. But before getting into that, let's do a quick rundown of the remaining steps. The second crucial step in your journey to your very first research is to turn that idea into a research question. Most probably, the very first question you asked was not suitable for a research. It is very rare, even for the most experienced researcher, for that very first question to be suitable. Quite often, the question needs to be fine-tuned before it is acceptable. After you have your question, you need to do a literature review on the question. You will do a critical literature review so that you can have an idea on what's known as well as what is unknown about the subject. This is the springboard. But what if others have worked on that idea in the past? Never mind. It's not likely that it will happen on an idea that nobody has touched upon in the past anyway. There are still a lot of things you can do with an old idea. For one, you can write a review article. A review article is like an overview of several articles dealing with the same theme or topic. It's a way of summarizing the findings in your articles. On the other hand, you can write a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis are like review articles in the sense that they deal with many articles on the same topic simultaneously. Unlike review articles, meta-analysis also collects the data from the articles and then analyze them as a pooled data. They are one of the most respected type of literature. When these two are not possible, then you may need to go back and ask another question. Look at your idea again, examine it in another different way, and then ask another question. Once you have streamlined your question, you need to see if they are valid and relevant. This is where your co-researchers come into play. You can send them out on the question, ask them about it. What do they think about it? Do they feel it is good enough? Can it guide the subsequent study? The young researchers may need to go a step further by finding a mentor to guide him or her. Your experienced senior colleagues are the best people to guide you at this stage of your career. For postgraduate students and resident doctors, your supervisors are your lifelines in this respect. Once you are sure that your research question is relevant, you have turned your initial idea into the beginning of a research. It's like a pregnant woman who has just delivered a baby. As we all know, that is when the job of raising the baby is just starting. Same with the research method. Developing your workable question is the beginning of the active phase of your research. With a workable research question in the kitty, it is time for you to begin planning for the research itself. How do you get an idea? How do you recognize that case that needs to be reported? How does some information perceived click together in your brain to become an idea? In other words, where does idea come from? Ideas come from experience and previous knowledge of facts about the object of study. For example, the population. When you have the knowledge of a population, then you begin to notice patterns. With patterns, you have two main observations. The first one is regularities, and then the second one is anomalies. Something that happens with regularity is typical and expected. Regularity is the state of being regular and expected. When some things occur regularly, you begin to see patterns. When you see patterns, you begin to develop associations between the components making up the patterns. Regularly seeing two things happening in succession leads to suspicions of causality. For example, you push a switch and the bulb lights up. You may then develop an hypothesis to explain the regularity. That hypothesis will become your idea. It is important to know that causality can never be proven by the mere observation of regularities, but observing regularities can start your train of thought. In addition, regularity is based on regular observation. Regular observation makes it possible for us to see the pattern. Observations are an essential part of the scientific process. Let's look at an historical example of how an observation led to an important scientific discovery. For more than 1,000 years, the popular theory was that the Earth was the center of the universe. The Sun and the other planets merely revolved around the Earth. But Copernicus, a 15th century scientist's observation did not agree with the established theory. So, Copernicus tried a different explanation based on his observations. Copernicus asked, what if the planets actually orbited the sun? With this simple question, his observations begin to make sense. According to the Oxford Dictionary of the English Language, an anomaly is something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected. An anomaly or irregularity strikes our mind because it defies our expectations. It forces us to have a rethink. We begin to question the accepted explanation. If we had developed the hypothesis to explain the original regularity, we begin to question and reject it. The anomaly is a refutation of the hypothesis. It forces us to think about other explanations, and this leads to new hypotheses that we then try to test, and that becomes our new idea. Thus, the researcher may start from previous knowledge and experience. When these are challenged by anomalies, he or she looks for other ways to explain them. Here are two quotations from scientists themselves about anomalies. Anomalies play a crucial role in moving science forward. Investigating anomalies lies at the heart of scientific innovation. Let's look at another historical example. In this, we will look at how anomalies led to another important scientific discovery. The discovery of argon is a story replete with lessons in how scientists pursue knowledge. Lord Raleigh's use of multiple methods to measure the density of nitrogen and its persistent tracking down of a small but real anomaly in those measurements led to the discovery of argon, the first of the noble gases to be discovered. An interesting way to discover anomalies is to enter a new field of research. Since you have other background experience than the people already in the field, you see things that they take for granted but that strike you as odd. At the same time, you may also see new explanations for these anomalies. So, what are the sources of new ideas? This can be summarized into three. Review existing practice. The current practice is not as good as it could be. Challenge accepted ideas. Much of healthcare is based on accepted practice rather than research evidence. Look for conflicting views, which indicate either that there is not enough evidence or that some practitioners are misinformed. What are the sources of new ideas? They are all around you. Scouting for new ideas reminds me of what Jesus told his disciples in the Bible. Seek, he admonished them, and you shall find. The same holds true today. To the inquisitive mind, ideas are everywhere. That being said, the following are some of the ways to find new ideas to investigate. Investigate geographic variation. Reflecting on the reasons for geographic variation can be a fruitful source of research questions. Identify Cinderella topics. Important areas of healthcare are often overlooked. These are the so-called Cinderella topics, and investigating them may actually yield some new insights into the prevailing opinion. Finally, you should let loose the imagination. Look for wide or impossible ideas. Free the mind from the constraints of conventional wisdom. Here is another example from history. This one illustrates the importance of letting your imagination fly. Sir Isaac Newton was sitting under an apple tree when an apple fell on his head, so the story goes. Someone like me would just have thanked Providence and pick up the apple and start munching away. But Newton was a special man, arguably the greatest scientist who ever lived. That common happenstance started him on a train of thought that led to one of the greatest discoveries the world has ever known. And it was based on a simple question. Why did the apple fall? A seemingly foolish question that would have earned a scorned look from anyone nearby. Yet, it led to an earth-shaking discovery. Ask no question, make no discovery. Intuition is the ability to acquire knowledge without proof, evidence, or conscious reasoning, or without understanding how the knowledge was acquired. So, scientific intuition is an oxymoron because science is not based on hunch or gut feeling. However, I believe scientific intuition does exist because, as Louis Pasteur said, chance only smiles on well-prepared minds. So, a scientist who has read widely and worked hard may have a flash of intuition based on what he just observed. A quotation from one of the greatest scientists the world has ever known, Alexander Fleming, discovered penicillin, the first of the antibiotics to be discovered. Hear what he has to say about observation and intuition. For the birth of something new, there has to be a happening. Newton saw an apple fall. James Watt watched a kettle boil. Runge forged some photographic plates, and these people knew enough to translate ordinary happenings into something new. In the next few slides, we shall be looking into how to get new ideas. Experience is the best teacher. As the saying goes, it holds true for research as well. There are three main avenues by which a researcher can get ideas for research. The first and most easily available is through personal experience. This is obviously limited by the person's level of knowledge, skill, and expertise. A young researcher will obviously have little experience to work on. Such a person would be wise to seek the counsel of co-researchers and mentors. An essential strategy for a young investigator is to apprentice himself to the experienced senior scientist who has the time and interest to work with him regularly. This used to be the norm in the past centuries. For example, Michael Faraday was a protege of Humphrey Davy. The second major way by which to develop ideas is to be alert to new ideas. The first and most important way of doing this is by improving your knowledge base. You can improve your knowledge by reviewing the medical literature and attending journal clubs, national and international conferences, and seeking informal conversations with other scientists and colleagues. While you are at it, keep an open mind. Be skeptical about everything. Be observant. Record everything you see about your patient. The careful observation of patients has historically been one of the major sources of case reports and descriptive studies. The discovery of Helicobacter pylori as a cause of peptic ulcer disease was jump-started because of the keen clinical acumen of Barry Marshall. Your experiences in teaching, having to explain something may make you aware of gaps in your knowledge. Questions by patients and colleagues may similarly identify things that we do not fully understand or ignore. Keeping your imagination roaming is also a key factor. Many famous discoveries, such as Newton's law of universal gravitation, Kekule's benzene ring theory, and Fleming's discovery of penicillin, were aided by the imagination of the discoverers. Curiosity will not kill the scientists. It will probably earn them a Nobel Prize. You must keep track of your ideas. The easiest way to do this is by having a way to jot the ideas down as they are coming to you. Otherwise, you can forget them. In the olden days, you keep track of ideas by having a jotter or diary constantly by your side. Of course, you can still do that, but times have changed. Now you have electronic notes that can do this for you. They are available on all platforms, and they have the advantage of being able to capture different kinds of inputs such as voice, images, videos, screen captures, and web pages. Used correctly, they will help you to organize your thought process. Examples include Microsoft OneNote, Google Keep, Evernote, and many more. So, you have the idea and you have fine-tuned it into a format that may become the subject of a research. Where do you take your idea to? What is the next step to turn the idea into research? The first thing you want to do is to turn your idea into a research question. For you to do this, you must find out the existing knowledge about your idea through a literature review. According to McCombis, a literature review is a survey of scholarly sources on a specific topic. It provides an overview of current knowledge, allowing you to identify relevant theories, methods, and gaps in the existing research. Then look for the gaps in the existing body of literature on your idea. For example, there may be an existing knowledge on the frequency of a problem like incidence of road traffic injuries in your setting. A literature review may show you the existing gap in the road traffic injury knowledge base. Limitations and discussion sections of articles are important for showing gaps in knowledge. For instance, a literature review on road traffic injuries in your setting might show you gaps in the knowledge base regarding alcohol and road traffic injury, mortality in road traffic injury, and prevention of road traffic injury. Beautiful. You have succeeded into turning your idea into a research question. Where do you go from here? What is your next step? The next step is to refine your question into something that can be investigated using the scientific method. You must prune the question. This is the process of cutting away anything that is unnecessary so that only the essence remains. Thereafter, you must enhance the question. This is the process by which you develop the research question into something both interesting and feasible. To do this, you must know clearly where you are heading. You must have a preconceived idea. A researcher is not like a beachcomber who strolls along the beach to see whether anything valuable washed ashore. Rather, a researcher is like someone who has lost his wristwatch on the beach and returns to search for it. He knows what parts of the beach to look. He can describe his wristwatch in detail, and once he has found it, he knows that this is the watch he was looking for. To help you understand the process of refining your question better, think of a good researcher as a good clinician. The good clinician first wants to know what the patient's chief complaint is. This is equivalent to the problem that you want to study. The second decision a good clinician will take is to decide on what to do with the answer. In the same way, a researcher must keep in mind what he wants to do with the answers to his question while he is formulating it. What he wants to do with the answer is not just about the potential conclusions of the research paper, but more importantly, their meaning. What is the intended effect or impact of the findings? You should hone down on the gap in the existing knowledge base. Remember the watch on the beach analogy. When you are looking for the watch, you know the way it looks, its make, and the personal identifying mark you have on it, so that even if you should find another watch, you will not stop your search because you know it is not what you are looking for. That is the purpose of a good research question. It focuses your effort on the specific answer you are looking for so that you are not distracted by anything else. Be as specific as possible. Is it about etiology, about pathogenesis, about prognosis? What should change for the benefit of a particular group of patients? Try to be as specific as possible. Seek the opinion of your co-workers. Will your colleagues see these problems and their solutions as you do? And if not, why don't they? The pruning process is so important that different methods have been developed to guide the process for different types of research in medicine. These processes include the following. For clinical trials, the PICOT format has been developed. PICOT is an acronym for Patient, Intervention, Control, or Comparison, Outcome, and Time. For proposal writing, the FINA format was developed. FINA is an acronym for Feasible, Interesting, Novel, Ethical, and Relevant. For identifying confounding factors in epidemiologic studies, the DAG diagrams have been developed. The full meaning of DAG is Directed Acyclic Graph. The PICOT table contains items that you need to consider under the various subheadings. PICOT was initially introduced as PICO in 1995. As mentioned earlier, PICOT is widely used in clinical trials because it hones down on aspects of specific research questions. Here are the things to consider under the major subdivisions of the FINA protocol. Unlike PICOT, which is mainly focused on the research question, FINA is especially useful in helping the researcher to check out the general aspects of the research work. It looks at the research as a whole. After turning your idea into an acceptable research question, the next step in the process of turning your idea into research is to form a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement that can be proved or disproved. And the easiest way to do this is by taking your questions and turning it into a hypothesis. And the easiest way to do this is by taking your question and turning it into a hypothesis. Most time, you do this by simply turning your question into a statement. For example, the research question, does alcohol increase mortality of RTI, can be turned into a hypothesis, alcohol increase mortality of RTI. RTI means road traffic injuries. A null hypothesis is the hypothesis to be disproved. Just like it is easy to turn research questions into a hypothesis, it is even easier to turn a hypothesis into a null hypothesis. You do this by inserting the word not in the hypothesis. Example is as shown in the table. Alcohol increased mortality of RTI has been turned into the null hypothesis by inserting not in the hypothesis to become alcohol does not increase mortality of RTI. Research objectives outline the specific steps that you will take to achieve your research aim. Deriving the study objective is the final step in turning your ideas into research. Study objectives are directly linked to the research questions and the hypothesis because the objectives should indicate how the study is going to answer the research question. The table below shows how the study objective will answer the research. It not only states the objective, but it also stated what the outcome measure was going to be. In this case, the objective also included how the outcome will be measured. Let's look at a real-life example of the relationship between the research question, hypothesis, and study objectives from orthopedic surgery. This is a published paper, and the title was Low Intensity Pulsed Ultrasound for Chronic Patellar Tendinopathy, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. The research question was, how does low-intensity pulsed ultrasound LIPUS compared with a placebo device in managing the symptoms of skeletally matured patients with patellar tendinopathy? Let's see how these dovetail into the hypothesis. Pain levels are reduced in patients who received daily active LIPUS treatment for 2 weeks compared with the individuals who received inactive LIPUS placebo. You should note that the research question has been turned into a statement that states the expected outcome of the study and the objective, which was to investigate the clinical efficacy of LIPUS in the management of patellar tendinopathy symptoms. In an ideal world, every study should be preceded by a pilot study. This is because the main function of pilot studies is to determine if the study is doable, to work out the kinks in the protocol. Therefore, pilot studies are important because they can save researchers from the embarrassment of a study that can fail from poorly planned protocol. Once the pilot test is done and dusted, you should be ready to carry out the research proper. And after the research, you are all set for writing the manuscript. The processes of doing the research and writing the manuscript will be the subject of future videos in the series. Do stay tuned. We have come to the end of the lecture in which we have covered the important steps to converting your ideas into research. I am Oluwadeya Kehinde, a professor of orthopedic and traumatology at the Ekiti State University, Ado-Ekiti in Ekiti State, Nigeria. I have been teaching SPSS in healthcare research since 2004 in Nigeria and South Africa. I am also the author of the best-selling book on SPSS in Nigeria, Getting to Know SPSS, which also have supplementary chapters on online literature search, as well as Zotero and EndNote reference manager software. I am also the CEO of Post Educational Consult, which specializes in training in statistical software and health education. My website is at www.oluwadeya.com. Check it out for more information on my book. The website also contained close to 50 downloadable PDF copies of my lectures in anatomy and orthopedics. Finally, you'll come across assorted information on medical practice in Nigeria. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel at the address shown. This is the 4th item I have uploaded within the past few days. In the next few weeks, I'm going to add other uploads at the rate of 1 to 2 per week. The uploads will cover all my courses at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. These courses include anatomy, orthopedics, and traumatology, SPSS, and general statistics. Stay along with me. The best is yet to come. Thank you for your time and attention. And as they say in my language, ẹ ṣeun.